Hello everybody and welcome back to Wappelville. We're going to do another live stream for you here, and this is going to be another first. So I'm just going to let the chat things sort of do their own thing. Going to see what actually happens here. Does anything pop up? Otherwise I have to do some passwords and that sort of thing. What I will do is get rid of that thing right there, and we'll just see. Again, we're going to wait to see who comes on in. But let's make this picture here. Let's just get rid of this thing. I'm just going to get this thing out of my way. 1 second here. Let's just see if this works. It's the kind of the curse of all streamers here. You have to do all this thing every single time. And let's see if that worked. And apparently not. So we are not going to be doing that. Alright, let me just try and eliminate this element here. I think we're good now. We're going to be using mostly Reaper paints, but I do have just one little contrast paint in here, just for the heck of it. We've got some of our liner paints. Got me a red liner, sepia liner, brown liner, kind of the usual stuff. Kamitrion, how's it going? Well, that tells me that looks like, yeah, I'm just going to make sure. Aha. I'm going to try and get rid of this thing here. 1 second. Here. One moment here. There. Good morning. Let's see. So we finally finished your all night and finally catch a stream. Now we are going to use a couple other things here too. So we've got the from Golden Acrylics. We tried this in a previous session. That was really fun. We like that. And the usual sort of maiden flesh here, kind of lighten things up. And those are positioned out here on the palette. So blue liner, brown liner, red liner, clear red, clear orange, clear yellow, sepia liner. That's maiden flesh over there. And we also have bright ivory. This is from Creature Caster / Slow Fuse Gaming. And that the whole idea there is it's about opacity. It's all about the opacity. Now I've got a couple of skulls on here from Green Stuff World. You can see those guys. I thought if we could do a little bit of object source lighting, we could hit the undersides of this. Certainly get some object source lighting on the gun over here. There will be a little bit of it over here because we got these cracks here. This big old glove. And I've seen some reference pictures where that's glowing. Oh, first last is first. Yeah, I haven't. That's the only paint that I have. Well, that and the green one, which I'm going to be testing on some Army of the Dead in another live session, maybe next week, something like that. But the whole gist of this thing is here. Look at some of these references. See the one that's down in the right-hand corner and the left-hand corner. See the flesh tone there? It's kind of a cooler red. I don't want to, kind of like a burgundy or something like that. With this orange yellow here, it's a way to get some different color temperature in the red flesh tone instead of it just being, well, maybe a little bit cooler as it goes down to the ground. We also have some rosary bead type things we could reflect off of that. More skin tone down here so that, well, let's see what happens. It could be some fun. Now let's just get started here. Oh, Cody Toots, how are you going? How are you doing? Oh, blue liner, brown liner, water. Now I do have some Lamian medium out there on the other side that we can play with to... Actually, the primer on the skulls is still drying a little bit, so see, now we're getting some brown liner into that. Here's a little more of the brown liner, maybe a touch of the sepia liner too. And the idea is I just want to get this primer, which is the Badger Steiner Res as usual, just kind of knocked out of the way as soon as I can, as soon as possible. A little more sepia tone now, because if you look and see that according to your reference pictures there, it seems like the coat's just a little bit more on the tan side. I'm just gonna shove this thing down into here. And I know this can be, and I mention all the time, this can be sort of a traumatic thing for people to see that are just not used to this. They are used to the delicate, we're just going to paint one little tiny piece of this thing for 40 hours until that part is done and not even look at the rest of it. Which, oh, it gives you that instant gratification. You get to see something painted. That's cool. However, at a certain point, you start to realize, as I grab just a bit of that Flesh Tears red, yeah, just a bit of that, you start to notice, you say, oh, wait a second now. Now that I've got this other area painted in, the stuff that I started with looks too light, too dark, too whatever, because there was no context around it. So that is why we're just going right in here, straight, we're just blasting into this. No screwing around. Here we are. Gloves got to be red-ish, and we're just going to, like I said, we are throwing this paint around fast and furious here. Going to grab some blue liner here, throw it on this, on the gun here, just real quick. And that's that. And it looks all super messy and nasty and everything else. Well, that's kind of the point. It starts out rough, and then as you work your way through what I kind of had to call it something, so I called it shaded base coat. And you can see now that a little more of that sepia liner is working its way through here. We're doing a little bit of wet into wet, because why not? I'm going to hit the tail later with more red also when the time is right. I think we got plenty of darks distributed all through here. Now, let's play around a little bit with this. Oh, let's see. Sorry, I gotta scroll up on the chat here as I shake this here. Let's see, Trevor. Oh, got some more. Yeah, you got some more of the fluorescence. And gotta say, compared to the. Oh, yeah, well, that's what we're gonna find out right here. Well, confirm. Even though this is so liquid, most other fluorescents, when you're doing something like that, it just you couldn't even see orange there basically. And look at how intense that is. It's liquid but really intense. My guess is this would airbrush really well too. I'm just throwing that out there. I haven't tried that yet. I might have to or something like that at a certain point. Now here, I'm just throwing this in here just to get it in place. Because remember the whole thing about context? Well, just like establishing darks, well, I gotta start establishing some lights here. And this is even, it's blending in with the primer a little bit. I don't care, because one of the things that happens with people, they get really afraid to do the object source lighting. Oh, Runs with Caesars is back. Yeah, it does, like you say, there is a little bit of fortitude that comes along with being willing to do this. That's for sure. So I throw a little bit of the clear red in there. What are we going to do? We're going to start right off the bat figuring out where do we want object source lighting to go. Because what happens with folks is they paint all this stuff. Remember that 3 hours to paint one little micro section of the miniature, and then they say, oh gee, man, I've spent all this time doing this. Now I'm going to throw object source lighting on it. What if it goes sideways? What if I don't like it? And that usually ends up heading into the basket of, well, we just won't do it. Which is unfortunate because, to me, object source lighting, it does a lot of different things. Puts miniatures in a context like, well, what says Hellboy more than fiery skulls? And it's one way to make your figure distinct from, say, what everybody else is doing, because most everybody else is probably kind of gun shy on the object source lighting anyway. And you see where this is where we're going to just integrate a lot of things. I could even take some of the, so if the flesh tear is red, right, mix that with the fluorescent. And look, I'm not even waiting for the paint to dry here whatsoever. I'm just going right in here. And I'm using my big old craft brush. And straight away, you see what I'm talking about here with these. See that underlighting right there? Now we've got the cracks on this thing. We are going to take some of this here, and just as quick as we can. Trevor says they actually have an airbrush line that includes fluorescent. Oh, no, that's not the Createx. That's not the Createx line, is it? No, it could be, right? It might be. Yeah, yeah, because I think people have asked if I used the Createx fluorescence. At some point, I'll have to. Why not? There's plenty of things that I do that call for them. But see, because we put those darks in place straight away, here, I'm going to minimize some windows, get those out of my way here. And I'm going to make my window bigger. You can't see it. Looks the same to you. But to me, I can actually see what the heck's going on. And I also want to make sure we got a nice little focus going on for you there, too. Now here I might even exaggerate the intensity of the lighting on those skulls. Just, oh, I mean, it's Hellboy after all. This is not a historical miniature or anything like that. So a wee bit of license is called for. Oh, runs with Caesars. Says they're just miniatures, right? What's the worst that can happen? Boy, well, sometimes I get a little more intense. I'll say they're just toys. No matter what they are, they're kind of toys. I mean, when I'm playing Lord of the Rings with, and well, eventually Kathy and I will be doing some Warcry and such, and my bolt action stuff. It's historical, yeah, but it's kind of historical toys. I mean, that's how it is. It's not that serious. So already, we're a couple of minutes in. We've been playing around, saying hi, talking about fluorescent paints. Next thing you know, all of a sudden, it's really starting to see something. Now I've got to. This is that flesh tears red, tinge of the fluorescent in it, and all I'm trying to do is it's actually wet blending with some of the colors that we threw in there initially. Always a good thing. You don't get the wet blending unless you're willing to kind of sling around some paint like this. What's nice is on this side we can actually go with a cooler, or what would you say, more serene, less saturated lighting on the back. And what's interesting is actually what I'm putting on here, it looks light, but that's really just in comparison to what everything else is, because it is by no means light. Even this is not as light as this can go. Now, when you're dealing with stuff like a metal surface, you want it to be as reflective as possible. Here's another way we can not just lighten it up, but also enhance a little bit of the opacity just through some of that clear yellow in there. So straight away, it doesn't take long. You say, aha, yeah, there's we got ourselves some lighting going on. And it's basically the first thing that I did, really. What did I do? I slapped on some colors, just some basic glazes, washes, whatever you want to call them. And then I dove right into the OSL here, first thing, rather than the last thing. Because what if this just didn't work? Or what if we wanted it to be green reflecting on it instead of an orange light? Well, we spent all of 15 minutes, more like 10 minutes really. You could reprime over it, and for all that's good in this world, please do not strip it. My goodness, that is unnecessary in the extreme. It is not necessary to be stripping miniatures down. We've done it exactly once or twice in 20 years, and that's because there were figures we got off of eBay and there was super glue that was quite literally hiding the entire face. It was that thick. That required a little bit of stripping. Otherwise, not so much. It's just not necessary. And then now that the on the ground here, that gets a little more dry. Can start to do a little more with this. Just enhancing that light, and with barely any color at all. We've got shape, form. We've even started to figure out what we're going to do with this. Cracks are actually more pronounced than I thought they would be. They seem really minimal. And this, by the way, also not a resin master or something like that. This is just, it's the same production figure that you guys would get out of the box. It's that same sort of, well, what do you call it? The generic, well, I just kind of use bones as a material to describe anything. What, zombicide material, you know where I'm going with that. But the goal is block all this stuff in. We're not trying to get a finished result here. We're just trying to see, okay, how much do we put, say, lighting on his feet there? Yeah, this stuff is so intense that I might even turn down the brightness a little bit. Let's see. Kamitran says it went away for 3 minutes and it looks like it's almost finished. Yeah, a bit of red scale. I've been working on with coal palettes lately. Oh, hey, James and Will. How you guys doing? Now, I actually have all of the contents of the Hellboy board game. So there's some monsters. I've got other, what would you say, some of the other characters and such in here that I'll be working on. So I'll just take it real quick, I believe. There we go. So that's it. Hellboy, the board game. And, well, there's the guy that we're painting. But there's other figures in here, too. So, yeah, we've got some of those other ones. And we'll be doing those guys, too. Who knows? Maybe all of them. Oh, maybe we just do all of them with the glowing skulls here. By the way, again, from Green Stuff World. You know, GW has their box of skulls. Secret Weapon Miniatures has their sack of skulls. It's quite literally a sack of skulls. I think nowadays there's plenty of sources for those kind of basing extras. And yes, this is a 35-cent craft brush that I'm using. Eventually I'll show you. The package is changed. They used to be green handled like this. Oh, I guess I'll just show you right now because the packaging has changed to gray handles and they are still $4.99 a piece. There you go. 12 of them in there. I just get them off the Hobby Lobby website. They tend to end up in weird places in the store, make them hard to find. But that's not too shabby of a tip right there on this brush. That is not too bad at all. And because it is larger, it just lets me wet blend where I need to, because I'm just working faster by default. Now let's work on a pavement a bit here too. And let's see. Oh, thanks, Will. Oh yeah, that's I've got him here. I'll show you that figure later. I got those primed. All those big old bases that I was working on. Those are primed, and they look kind of neat when they're based. You do the basing. You say, oh, that looks neat on there. When they're primed and all of those crazy colors of the leaves and scopy and branches, once that's all unified, that really changes how they look. So I'll try and bring some of those out too. I tried to do the super chat thing, and it was another horrendous failure. It just does not want to work. It was interfering with all my other tools on the screen, so that went away, and I'm just not going to mess around with that anymore. I'm kind of done with that, unfortunately. But I think people can see the Patreon. That's it's going to be scrolling by soon. That is a huge library of tutorials. And by huge, I mean well, let's say at the start of December it was around 230 some odd hours. As of tonight, it'll be more like 250 hours because I believe I have added 6 new videos since December started. Average running time, about 2 hours and something apiece. And when you do that Army Painter pledge, you get a lifetime of links. That's what we'll just call it. I think that's it. I should have a t-shirt for that. There. What I'm trying to do is make, again, I always talk about those linear lights when we're dealing with object source lighting or any kind of lighting on stuff that is metal. So see, we've got a nice little foundation here. Now we have to go a little bit in the opposite direction here. I'm going to grab more of that fleshed here red because that's nice and intense, but it's also transparent. And see, while this is still wet, because I want that to actually do a little bit of blending there, just a little bit. Yeah, we're going to go a little bit lighter on the stuff that's on his foot here. Yeah, I tried, did the password thing, typed it all in. The regular chat came up all by itself and worked. That one just didn't want to work, and I watched more videos on it to try and get that to work. And of course, all of them are from 2018 and 2016 and 2017, and none of them talk about XSplit. So something from 2018 might as well be something from 1918, because YouTube Studio has overtaken. Even today, I had to upload the Patreon video in an entirely different way than I did less than 24 hours ago. I guess if I wasn't using XSplit, it would be a different thing. But without XSplit, I can't have my photos up there. And I kind of wanted those reference photos. So, see, now I can get to this one and move it. So you can see how the skin tones on that are a little bit cooler. And then the coat next to it and the gun. See those linear highlights on the gun? We'll be doing those too. Now, Will asked, what level Patreon would folks recommend? You could do the $5 one. That will get you plenty of links there too. There's even the $10 one, which focuses on basing, Dark Sword, the Blackheart busts. And now I'm going to go a little bit more with my yellow here. And we are going to put just a touch of that white in there. I mean, just a touch. That's just for opacity. Because the big chunk of the videos that I uploaded this month so far are in the basing category. And in the dark sword category, I think, unfortunately, I have that figure sitting in another room, but I was just messing around for the first time with vellum lily pads and water lilies, and that was a wild. Oh, and the Green Stuff World UV resin water. So as you can imagine, it's all about experimenting. You don't need to see me do the same base 100 times. What I did this in this latest video was take the principles that I did in the previous tutorial a couple of days before that, and then made diorama bases out of them. So what I mean is the first video was more like this. So a single miniature on a base, and then we said, you know what, let's take that to another level. Then we're going to do something like this, where we base the whole family of owlbears. Who gives a hoot? Yep. And the color test figures, like Trevor mentions, those are some of my favorite episodes because just like this figure is setting the stage for all of the other figures from the box because this is going to happen on all of them. Well, anybody that knows me knows I love my object source lighting, and you're going to give me an excuse to try it. I will take it 100% of the time. Hey, Ken, how's it going? Yeah, I'm looking forward to the. It's a real different genre for me, a massively different genre for me. Now, I've done a lot of the historical figures lately, but I love my Lord of the Rings because hey, my Easterlings, they are rocking Middle Earth something fierce. Took out Aragorn. I'm sure at some point they're gonna run across Boromir and they'll have to take him out too. I got so many armies there. My Candish allies for my Easterlings. The Easterlings were actually a series. I think that was series 4. I think series 6 or 7 was my Morgul Knights. Series 9 was Rohan. Actually, series 15, well, series 14 was my Cypher Lords for Warcry. See, we're just starting to add some, just kind of working our way up, walking our way up the lightness ladder here. Look at that, it's nice and kind of nice and fiery there. So we want to basically set, okay, our lightest lights should probably be the burning skulls. Probably not some street light that's kind of reflecting down onto his head or whatever, or casting some light there. I'm thinking this is where we want some of our brightest light sources to be, and also some of the most intense light. Speaking of intense light, we need to make that a bit more. But it's not going to be universal. If I make this yellow crack right here, orange crack, the same intensity everywhere, it's just going to look like, well, yellow lines running through it. If I do it where it's more intense in some places than others, it just somehow that gives it more of a glow. Okay, we played with that. Let's stay within the red family here, but remember that flesh tier is red. What's the whole point of that? Well, we're going to grab some of that maiden flesh there. And now we're going to also take a little bit of our red liner. That's from Reaper. Hey, Falcon, how's it going? Oh, and Chopper. Oh, I want to make sure that I'm not missing anybody. Here, let's try some of that right in here. But look at, see how that's transparent? See how that's transparent? That's because we were using some of that flesh tier red. I was not really super enthused about going towards the whole contrast paint thing. It was just, I didn't want to be using them. people kept asking over and over again, look, is there something to substitute for some of these Reaper clear and liner paints? Well, as the more I looked at those contrast things, I said, you know what? I think those could actually be a substitute for these. I got a few. I think I got 11 of them. And some of them were also sold out, but even the contrast medium, I couldn't get it. It was not available. But I got colors that closely, or at least as close as possible, to match what I used to do, or still do, but with the clears and the liner paints from Reaper. Because people overseas just have a tough time getting those. And they turned out to be very similar. They kind of acted in a similar way, allowed me to do transparent things. Like you're seeing here. This is normally what I'd be doing with, say, clear red and the clear liner paints. So again, the skin tone is getting lighter, but it's also cooler. It's even toned down a bit. It's not as intense as our orange, because, well, if it's any more intense than the orange, the fire is just not going to have that look to it. And this red, I almost want it to be sort of towards the brown here, even less of the cool red that we're working on up here. So you can see I'm just working my way into that. I want it to be pink. So at a certain point, maybe I grab a little bit of the blue liner or something like that just to keep it from getting pink. We're not using white because white will make it pink and also make it chalky. Probably two things you're not looking for on your Hellboy figure. Oh, let's see. Oh, yeah, there's nothing going on here. It's definitely working on my end. I see 0 drop frames. So thanks, Ken and Noel, for taking the time to refresh. That was happening on Kathy's stream earlier today. There was at least 2 people that were watching that were convinced that she had gone away, and she said, "No, no, you refresh," and sure enough, it worked again. Now the thing is too, this is part of that, remember, shaded base coat. This is not final layers. This is base coat. Yes, what I've been doing here, in my mind, still constitutes nothing but a base coat. Because, well, we haven't messed with this area yet, and that's what we're going to do. Because, see, we've already, would you say, in 20 some odd minutes here, we got some nice lighting here. We got even some skin tone blocked in. Just going to go over here. We're going to grab some of that sepia liner. See how transparent that is? What's the snakebite leather? If you're looking for a contrast equivalent, that would be it. And you notice I didn't even bother cleaning my brush. I'm just letting the stuff that's in there mix in, because what is it we always say? Color goes somewhere. It must go everywhere. Oh, I also want to do a little bit of shout out to all of the folks that signed up for the classes that I'm doing at Adepticon. I believe they sold out in something along the lines of 10 minutes. Well, I know it was just minutes, because I turned around and was informed that, yeah, they're sold out. So I was all set to have to, on these streams, say, oh, hey, we're doing these classes at Adepticon. You want to sign up, this, that, and the other. Well, they've been absorbed. That's really cool. I was, again, not expecting that. I had hoped that they would sell out, but it's been many years since I was last able to do classes at Adepticon. I kind of found out this just how many years ago that was, and that was sort of scary. Just that alone, realizing, that's longer ago than I thought it was. Yeah. And again, we're just building these things up, and that color wasn't looking so light, and then all of a sudden we put it over here. We said, holy smokes, it's lighter than we thought. And then I realized, oh, the tail probably should be red. So this is some of that original color that we tossed down there. See, again, another quick little modification. And, oh, what the heck, we're just going to grab some clear red. That's the Reaper Clear Red, and we'll just paint right in there. So this is what I mean about a base coat. This is what I mean about being able to just sort of switch directions. It's like a running back. We just cut back. Didn't see an open hole and cut back and went in a different direction. I am going to throw a little bit of this more intense red, a few places on the face here. Now, the reason why this is a, I don't know, kind of a really different thing for me that I'm just not used to, when you're painting more natural skin tones, I guess we'll just go that route. Usually, greens and purples, that is your sort of off-color skin tone. Well, when they're basically a demon spawn, that really doesn't necessarily work too well because of the, well, red skin and all. Which means I have to sort of find another, something besides just various lights and darkness of red. Gotta find something else to throw in there. See, even here, yeah, that's red, but I'm just gonna hit it with a little bit of the tan color that we're working on here. We'll throw a little more of the maiden flesh in there. So Falcon Nomad says, I wish my, whoops, I just got, oh, hey, Arax, how's it going? Wish that my finish coat was your base coat. I wish we had cool conventions like this in Taiwan. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Well, I know there's the ones in Europe that everybody talks about. I know some of the Blood Bowl tournaments and stuff. Well, that's more of Australia and such. That's still a long ways away from Taiwan. Well, but speaking of that area, a lot of folks, they do come here for Adepticon. I know I played in, I think it was my last 40K tournament that I played in. Two of the 4 or 5 guys I played were from Australia, believe it or not. Because I had to explain why everything in this area had, if it was food, it had cheese on it. And they were asking me why there weren't those various seafood options, and I said, well, you're probably a good 14 to 1700 miles away from any sort of an ocean. But what you got around here, you do have a lot of cows. So you can have cheese on everything. See how we're just sort of lightening this up now? It's the same thing we were doing down here with the skin tone and the object source lighting. Oh, Ken says, yeah, I've been trying a few new techniques, and yes, the most powerful brushes in the world, the number 8 round craft brushes. You can change the handle, but you can't take away the brush itself. And what do I mean by the brush is very powerful? Well, for one thing, before I started this, I must have cleaned a dozen of those with rubbing alcohol. And actually, I was using one of those. And the reason I had to clean it with rubbing alcohol was that it had some glue in it earlier today. So yes, I was painting with a brush that had glue and sand and gravel in it. So how's that? And testament to the strength and durability of the miraculous craft brush. Yeah, actually, Falcon No Man there talks about the paint by numbers thing. We've talked about that so much, where that just, and I understand why it becomes a thing, because for folks that don't want to have to try and figure these things out, well, if you try more of a paint by numbers approach, you're gonna, it's something maybe you can count on each time you go to sit down to paint. Now here we're just throwing, I'm gonna throw a little monkey wrench in here, throwing a little bit of blue into that. And I know with the historical stuff, wow, talk about, I just call them mechanical painters, where it is 15 steps to victory, and they will never, ever, ever deviate from those steps. And unfortunately, not every single thing conforms to those 15 steps. It might do vehicles very well, but it's not going to do the crew or any other infantry figure very well whatsoever. What I try to do with these methods here is create as many options for you as I can. And here you also notice that we're not worried about things being real smooth at this point because, remember, base coat. We are still just screwing around with base coats. We still have to put some base coats on the blue steel parts of the gun. We haven't had anything down here. I haven't painted a single thing in this area over here. So we're going to start getting to that now. We're going to be doing some glazing back and forth. But you can see how we got some of the red is still in this coat, even though it's quote unquote tan. Now we're going to really throw you for a loop here as we're going to start to incorporate a little bit of bluish gray in here. Why? Because that bluish gray, and it's ever so slightly blue, it's going to make that tan look a little more tan. It's also going to let me throw a little bit of that bluish gray onto the figure too. And oh wait, bluish gray, oh yeah, the gun also has some blue in it. What do we call that in the radio industry? We call that a segue. That was a painting segue right there. So let's get some slightly lighter bluish gray. Now I'll call him step 16. Oh, Runs with Caesars has only been painting miniatures for 6 months or so. Gee whiz, we constantly think back to the early days. What was it, 2001? Yeah, summer of 2001 when we first started to paint miniatures. Kathy and I are both 2D artists by training and trade, and just for various reasons, we ended up doing the miniature painting. And there was many hard lessons learned because we didn't quite have all of the nifty you had Cool Mini, fortunately. That was a place to look at miniatures and what other people were doing. But I didn't even realize that there was such a thing called static grass. I didn't realize that you should be painting your gravel and your sand. We would find some colors of it and we'd put that on a base and we'd think that we were geniuses. It was the greatest thing ever. And we said, when we finally saw somebody who knew way more than we did about miniatures, and they showed us basing, that was when basing immediately became an obsession for me. I swore that I was never going to have stupid looking bases again. And we kind of became known for basing. Well, plus this crazy thing with the craft brush too. So yeah, how long have we been at this? Now, 35 minutes, maybe 40 minutes. And we got ourselves all kinds of nifty stuff going on here. I do want some darker red. There's my red liner here. Touch of the brown. Work that into the hair, make that darker. Over here. Then I'm going to have to do some stuff with the eyes. We're just going to get some dark in there for right now. And the muzzle, just going to make it. You notice we're not using black because, hey, blue and brown, guess what? They make black. I will put this over here. I'm going to get some more blue liner out here. Just wanted to do a little glaze of that in here, just to cool some of these things down a bit. Now I have another contrast color here. This is from a previous episode here. That's a Achillean green. Look at how much more intense that is than our blue liner. And just like we saw on the quick little reference picture there, I want this side to not just be lighter, but also be, and by lighter I mean their side, the stuff that's pointing towards the sky, for lack of a better term. Where are we at here? Just going to get the same kind of linear highlights I was just talking about that we did with the object source lighting. We want to do with this, and guess what? As we compare that blue to our orange there, this starts to get that look of, you got those sharp lines of steel. See that little, and that's not even the brightest highlight we're going to do. It's not even the brightest one, but look at, now I'm able to just kind of keep on painting with this nifty little craft brush right here. Oh, let's get some reflected light on the bottom of the barrel here, like so. Now I'm going to throw some, again, this is the blue liner from Reaper. Let's see, Ken says he's been painting on off for 15 years. 1 second, just going to put some of this out here. There. Probably learned progressive most in the last 4 months. Paint, oh, the Zangors. I actually I've got to get me some of those because, well, Zinch. I mean, hey, who doesn't love their Zinch? This guy does. Hence the whole Zinch-themed Tomb Kings. But I definitely have to get me some of those somehow. Maybe I can find some on eBay maybe that are, even if they're half clipped off the sprue or something like that. Because with the glowing stuff like this, only maybe glowing green. So what we're going to do, we're going to take that blue liner. Once again, trying to, it's a bit of sky earth, except this is sky fire. It's sky fire combination. We're doing that. I'm going to take some of that blue liner, mix it with the brown here, make a basically black, because hey, blue and brown, when you're spending all that money buying black paint, what you're really doing is some other guy just took blue and brown paint and mixed them together and said, now give me $5 or more, depending on the case. Sometimes a lot more. I forget. I remember seeing the movie. Oh, geez, I think it was last winter or something like that. I think it was. I'm just gonna go with sort of a generic, sort of a lighter tone right now, just for now, on the badge there, on the shoulder for now. Didn't actually have time to look that up yet. Okay, and then also too, we've got cross. We got some other metal things here. Now let's see if we can't get some couple of lighter lights on the gun here, especially right near the end of the barrel here, especially over here. Another one there. on the top edge. And it's important to actually sometimes break up that line because light sources usually aren't quite that continuous and solid. And even here, you would see the circular. I think you can even see it sometimes in my paint palette over here. You can see the circle of the LED light that I'm using, the magnifier light. You can even see the reflection of the other side lights that I use, the other LED lights. Here, just a couple more. It's not like we're just going to only use the gigantic brush here. We will be using a smaller brush when it's that time. You got to give him some eyes here. I'll also give us a bit of a reference on the skin tone. I also want to get some of this yellow on the coat here. Now, because we have some of the, what is it, the creature caster ivory in that, it's going to be a little more opaque. It's just something to keep track of, something to be aware of. Once again, just trying to find as many different colors as we can use. Oh, miniatures, conversions, and dioramas is back. Yeah, we're doing, I guess it's another thing that falls into that superhero genre. There will be plenty of these. I think the other reason I'm doing this with the lighting like this is I've got a Captain America figure that I want to do, and I wanted to have basically that warm light of a street light, sort of lighting part of him, and then the rest be very, very cool gray, bluish gray, very, again, towards the cool side. Yeah, we're starting to maybe get past the shaded base coat phase into something that's more, and again, don't even want to use the word finished, but I am going to use some of that ivory, some of that yellow, a touch of the golden acrylics, a little more of that yellow, because my fire actually has to get a little bit brighter here. There in the eye. I'm not even sure if the camera's going to pick it up. It's that intense, that bright. There, a little more. Now let's try and get some, yeah, that cross right there, it has to have a nice bright highlight on it. Because otherwise, it just won't be that sort of hard surface. Just like here, we're trying to get some, and see how I've broken up that yellow or the orange there a little bit. The whole idea is to indicate again that we have two little burning skulls here, so that light source wouldn't be completely consistent really at all. And yeah, there's just water in this little bin right here. That's all it is. Oh, Will asks, how do you deal with the extra space on volumes and bigger figures and busts? How do you make the spaces more interesting and contrast? Well, that's what we're about to play with here on this coat. Just going to move that palette where you can see it. So we're going to take some of this blue into here. Touch of Maiden Flesh to gray that down. This is what I like to do sometimes in the folds. Yes, it's a tan jacket and it's got kind of a bigger open space, which means in the folds, instead of just doing a darker tan, we're actually doing sort of a bluish gray. Heck, it might almost be construed as green in some places. And I do that a lot on cloaks, especially on cloaks. Here we're doing it on a trench coat. And it's about the most the largest, most open surface on them. And we'll just get a touch more of the maiden flesh in there. I don't want it to get too blue, but I think you can see, yeah, I think now you really see that sweeping brushstroke. That's the other thing too, that this is, see, it's nice and soft. We're doing directional strokes, long stroke. Now let's say, okay, well, let's do something like this here. So we've got our little teeny spotter brush like this, right? So we're doing this all day long. That's going to just take us forever to deal. And we're also doing 1,000 little brushstrokes. It's almost like pointillism there. It's going to be tougher to have, I know everybody wants those smooth blends and everything else. It's going to be tougher to do those when you're doing 1,000 brushstrokes and I'm doing 4. And the race to that whole smooth brushstroke thing, or smooth whatever, this is actually an easier pathway to that. I know it may seem like that's unlikely, but it really does bear out in the end. There. The other thing it lets me do, like I said, those adjustments. And maybe a little more of the sepia liner in there. So we've got this. Here, let's lighten it up a touch. Gonna go a little more sepia liner in there. See what we have. Now, you can see we're gonna actually take a little bit of the, what is that stuff called? The Lamian medium. And see, I'm almost using kind of a sideways brushstroke because I'm trying to do something more like that. See that big old brushstroke there? We have, look at that. You have the tiny point, or look at that. It's like we got a 1/2 inch wide filbert brush. That's what I love about these so much, is they let me do those kind of things. That's what's really nifty about them. Now I got to get some of this coat, some of this gray onto here. Yes, it's red skin tone, but just like you, when you look at yourself in the mirror, you sure as heck are not all just pink. You are many other colors, most of them, the vast majority, not pink. We are going to do that here too, and some of the recesses of the skin tone. And I know this, it just will kind of shock and horrify people, but remember I was talking about how could I find some alternate, just like we have green and purple and such in our faces, how can I find something along those lines for him? See how we're also kind of doing some brush strokes over the initial object source lighting there. All right. Oh, while I'm thinking about it, let's just grab some of this red here, because hey, it's just sitting on the palette. We need to get his tail lightened up in a few places here. I'm going to grab some of that Lamian medium again, and now it becomes more transparent. And I've been using this with the GW paints, but I've also been experimenting, well, how does the Lamian medium work with creature caster paints or the Reaper paints? Let's go a little bit lighter here too. And this is obviously, it's not that whole, we're layering things lighter and lighter, because as you can see, I've gone back and even darkened things in some places. Just like how we added the bluish grays here. I'm going to go back to his face, and I'm going to try and remember to use more of the Lamian medium. I just want to see what happens with it. See, it does let me do more of a kind of a glazing action there. Now let's start to bring out the ears, cheekbones, eyebrows. Can bring out Now let's go back to the chest here. We have not really gone anywhere near as light as we can go with this, and at this point, now I can use a smaller brush because we've pretty successfully blocked everything in. There's your base coat. Now let's start to maybe play around with some more details. Yeah, let's get ourselves a smaller brush. We're going to take some of the blue liner here, go into these eyes. Give these a little more character here. And now let's just give him some eyes. Just kind of looking at you. Not quite sure what you're up to. Maybe he just broke another cell phone again. And at this point, I can start to put more definition in other areas. So, like here on his hand. And we'll go back and do some lights there too. Because we can do this for hours more. We've only done it literally for minutes right now. I think this only started basically an hour ago. And the other thing too, when you have something like object source lighting, you almost have to think about, for lack of a better term, do you paint the shadow in too? Because it should cast a shadow on some places. I have done that on some 75 millimeter figures. Oh, let's see. I'm going to take a look at the chat here. So, Will says, still yet to manage the fabled one-shot mini. It's now when I'm normally working, obviously there's hundreds of figures, and Trevor knows I sent him some pictures of a few of the areas where there are miniatures stored and ready for painting. But I know I talk about all the time that sometimes people, they get bored with their armies or their figures or whatever, and they're stuck with that because they don't have other projects going on. Me, there's never any shortage of that. And it really does help because, well, this sure as heck is different than painting Lizardmen Blood Bowl or Cypher Lords or Bolt Action Italians or Cruel Seas ships. And that, it helps so much because you just kind of you're just keeping yourself fresh. You're just not getting bored. And it can happen even with the most cool minis, your favorite army, whatever. You keep looking at that same thing all the time. Eventually, it's just, you will get bored with it. It's boredom management. How do you deal with that where the shine is off of that project that you've been wanting to do and it just sort of reaches that stage? Now, that's stuff that I cover in the Army Painting series too. I engineered the draw is in here. And Fruity Toots has the question too. How would you base Sisters of Battle? Stuck on ideas. Well, you'll be seeing mine. I'm assembling those actually tomorrow because my hope is that, was it Friday? Yeah, well, I guess it's going to be early Saturday morning, but for me, 2:30 in the morning, I guess Saturday, I want to be painting either probably a Seraphim. That's my goal. If you go to the blog, oh, look at that, wappeliusblogspot.com. I just scrolled on the bottom of the screen. If you go over there, you will see plenty of articles on my Sister of Battle Imperial Guard Army that I did for, what was that, Adepticon 2014? And you'll see all my sculpted marble bases. You'll see the actually, well, there's a couple of Patreon videos on that. The secret weapon Rav 6x6 that I turned into an exorcist, and another one that I turned into a Hydra, I think. And I painted all my favorite sisters freehand. Basically, I created my own. They were called Sisters of the Raven with gold armor and Kelly green and blue woad on their faces, actually, and red hair. I had a whole story behind my Sisters of Battle army. And, well, sisters are back, so that's going to be fun. All right, let's do a little bit of. Now that we've got a smaller brush, we can get in here into the face and maybe do some more little fun things. Nothing to say that I couldn't maybe brighten up a color here or there. Oop, I just got to remember to use that Lamy in medium. Yeah, I loved my sisters. Those were very fun. I even had saved some, oh gosh, I think it was Void miniatures to use as Seraphim. Saved them for years. And by years, I mean somewhere around 12 years. I think I converted a figure to be a Celestine type. Now it was Celestine, actually. Now, using the little bit of my Maiden Flash. Gonna get just enough orange in there so it doesn't get pink. Little yellow here too. Cause we gotta get some lights going here on this. The reflected color on that's gonna be more of that bluish gray. So here, don't want to get too much into the red. So we'll just keep using some yellow into here. Again, keeps it from getting pink. But I also don't want it to get too close to my orange glow that's inside of this here. But we need to get some shape. It's looking a little flat. Just like our gun here, we have to have, it's that linear thing, that dark, light, dark again. Here, let's go a little more with that. Do that on the other side here too. And the other thing too we have to consider is, well, this is it's a board game miniature. It is not a resin cast or a metal cast or anything like that, which means you have to deal with some of the things that happen with almost essentially like a Zombicide figure. We are going to try and get a few highlights on some of these though, because it is, I mean, yeah, stone, but you want to indicate that it's a hard surface. And that's what I'm trying to do just along here. Same thing over here. And let's see what some of these got. Some, obviously pouches and stuff here. I am going to take my, I almost said snakebite leather. That's sitting over here, by the way. I have to kind of reactivate it a bit, but yeah, I mean, you can see how close those are. That was sepia liner, and then all of a sudden it was snakebite leather. But once again, I can go into some of these areas here, and it's sort of a glaze. It's almost like a filter. It's almost like we're just doing a bit of tinting here. I gotta get into my red again, because I'm just going to say that's got to be skin tone there. Now, let's see if we can, speaking of skin tone, get some lighter, non-fiery skin tone colors on this. But for sure, these lights can't be lighter than what basically the flaming skulls did as far as lights. I got his ear over here, so again, his head. And I will be doing a little bit. Yeah, I got to get some orange here on his neck because that could have a bit of light cast from the fire there. Now notice how, see this, the fire doesn't carry into here. That's because I'm just assuming that these block the light from actually hitting that. So if you're wondering why there's kind of that line there, even in the very early stages, remember, I was trying to think of stuff like that. So now we're getting back into some areas that we haven't touched since pretty much the first few brushstrokes on this. All part of that very dramatic shaded base coat. Now let's get a little more solid orange colors here in our skulls because we just sort of slammed in there with our initial layers and then we let it go so that we could work in other areas. I can see I need to also, there's some areas on this boot here. You can't see it. Sometimes stuff like this that there's no way you can see. I kind of take a pass on that and just do it later because it just doesn't make sense for me to waste time trying to paint things you can't see. You're not really going to get a whole lot of information out of that. And we are going to try and, on this side here, I just need to get an edge light there because it's a hard surface. Those edge lights like that, see the one I just did there, that indicates a hard surface. That's why you don't really want to be doing those on skin and on clothes or things that are supposed to be more soft, flexible, whatever. Oh, let's see. So Ken, as I went out this past week and picked up a range of Golden brand fluorescent paints. Yeah, but those mecha paints, they're thin. Yeah, I guess you can shoot them through an airbrush, but man, they don't cover at all. Not like these things do. So I'm gonna definitely have to try and shoot those through an airbrush or something. See what happens. Holy smoke, can you imagine those combined with the Badger ghost tints? Wow, that's gonna be pretty intense. All right, you can see we're just trying to build our fire effect, our lighting effect onto these surfaces here. Got our rosary thing there. Here, let's see if we can go even more intense on that. That's the creature caster white. Let's see. I'm loving the golden fluoros. I was, you saw it here. I tried using those things, and it's one of those things where maybe I just thought it was me. I just didn't know, wasn't quite sure what was going on, and no, it was just the stuff. It stunk. I did not like it. Didn't like it at all. And actually, I didn't get it on purpose either. It was I had ordered it, and instead of the regular Vallejo fluorescents that I was expecting, I got the Mecha ones. And that was not a happy moment. Just a couple more there. And here. And certainly over here. On our gun. Yeah, see, we got our nice. Now we got over here, we got to do some basically reflected light over here. And that's going to be this warmer color here. Can you see it? Yeah. similar to what we did on the other side, but now way more toned down for sure. And I can over here where now I could play around with these brush strokes and maybe I don't want to say do it as stitching or whatever, but maybe we don't necessarily want it to be a bunch of smooth, almost like it's been airbrushed. Maybe we want to show some kind of texture there, not necessarily brush strokes, but maybe, I don't know, stipple it a little bit, maybe. But even here on the coat, there's, while it looks tan, there's some blues in there, there's some greens, there's even a little bit of red in that. All right, let's take, I'm going to take a little bit of the yellow here. This will be an interesting, so that's yellow, the clear yellow and the red liner there. This is for the hair, such as it is. I definitely shoot the mecha paint through the airbrush. Yeah, I tried just, well, doing my usual brush painting thing like you saw me doing here, and oh boy, that did not work out well whatsoever. Let's get a little more in the way of lights here. So we got some different temperatures of red for sure on the hair now. A little more shape to it, of course. I certainly want it darker than the coat because the coat apparently is this light tan. Now, I might just go in on the face here and create a little more dramatic light on the face. So let's see. Ken says the mecha need a light undercoat or multiple labels. Yeah, this golden stuff. Wow, it is just. I can only imagine how powerful that's going to be through the airbrush. Just well, a lot like the ghost tint, I'm sure, but actually it won't be glossy. Yeah, I'm starting to imagine that the that green combined with maybe the plasma blue or whatever, the ghost tint, or the orange one here combined with say the fresh blood of the ghost tints, or the what's that? There's an orange one too. Yeah. So now the other thing too is that the blue down in the crevices of the coat, that red starts to pop out a little more. I'm gonna go with the. Gotta do something on this glove here. I'm gonna just maybe go more towards a gray here. So that means blue liner and some of that. I'm also going to do some glazes back the other way on this glove here. I know these surfaces are nowhere near as exciting as that. Still have to figure out exactly what we're going to do over here too with the symbol on his arm. But I'm also going to take my blue here and work some of that back in here. It can't all be just the dark blue. Speaking of blue, putting in some of that into the crevices there. Now I've got a little different red color here for that's got some of that blue I was telling you about, some of the blue liner in it. Trying to give a little texture to this also. But this is sort of devoid of any kind of reflected light inside the coat area here, so we'll do that now. And I hope you can see what that actually does for it. yes, his skin tone is red, but just like your skin tone is not exclusively pink, there's a lot more going on. It'll be more interesting to look at. I can tell you that right now. It'll be a lot more interesting to look at. I'm also going to take some of this is some of our original, gosh, red liner and the, what was that, the flesh tear red, right? See if we can give him a touch of a scowl here. There. Yep. I also need to, here, well, another little glimpse at just how intense that orange is. See what a little dot of it's going to do here. Bang, like that. I was just playing with my brightness there a little bit. Now, let's look at this. So you see you got all this really intense color here. We got your blues and grays. We're going to go zoink like that. And you kill the color, and you can see plenty of shading. Look at the gun right here. You can see all of our highlights are still there. Even over here, you can still see shading on the coat, but we're going to bring back the color intensity. And now you can see all those subtle warms and cools and everything else there. Now I'm going to, right here on his hand and the arm, this is a sort of a toned down version of the fiery lighting there of our skulls. Gonna try and get something besides just bluish colors there. But we also need to have, we haven't even touched white as far as a highlight color whatsoever yet. This is the first time, and we're what, an hour and a half in basically. And we're really thinking of it just for your metals here. And now that gives it one last shot of even more intensity right there to balance out the fire side of it. Again, using the creature caster ivory because it just has so much coverage. And now our reflected light on that side looks more like reflected light instead of darn near just as bright. And we are now going to go with some white and some yellow here. And another, and you can't even see it. This is so bright, you just can't see it. It's the intensity of those fluorescents is actually just kind of confusing the camera. I will go back into this red here. I'm going to sort of straighten out some of the beads right here. Oh, also have to check out the chat real quick. Ken asked, the Ghost Tints inks. They, yeah, they're super intense. They're very thin. I think I've got one. Here it is. So this is the fresh blood. Now these, you just have to remember that they're going to be kind of on the shiny side. They are not flat matte or anything of the sort. So that's just something to factor in. All right, I think I want to get some more darks again back into the face. And you also too have to, I guess, give yourself a little bit of leeway on this because, like I said at the start, this is not a resin master or something like that. This is just the production figure out of the box, which means you're going to have some weird mold line things and that sort of stuff going on. right. Yep, we didn't do much over here, and that is where we are gonna see. Look at how grayed down this red is. It's still red compared to that. Look at that. They started out the same. We have just sort of, what would you say, kind of poisoned the mix a little bit by putting some of our opposite colors in there. Now let's get back around to this, and that's the other thing. I knew I was forgetting something there. It's the other leg here that we have to do. To do something else over here too on his foot. I think there's a little bit of a strap right there. Because we've got obviously lots of lighting on the other side of it from the fire. But we also need, and I have to cool this down a bit. So because I got a lot of orange going in there. You can see I'm getting into my red here to cool this down. Like that. Now let's get some of this up here on the chest. Got that clavicle to hit. And I am trying to, so there's a little bit of stippling going on. Look at just ever so slight. We'll do that here. Let's see what we can do on his face here. Well, I do need to also have some red. So I'm going to use the clear orange now instead of the fluorescent orange. And I want to get, yeah, right here between these is two horns that he keeps shaving down over and over again. As much as I like to have the upper lip here be somewhat darker, I kind of changed my mind on that. I'm going lighter. The thing is, one of the reasons I wanted it to be darker is because, well, we're talking about the light casting shadows and such. But since it's the head, it could maybe be getting its own light just from the ambient light source. So that's why there's really not hard and fast rules for things. I know people sometimes they want me to say, if you do this 100% of the time, it's always going to be this, and you always get that. And I try to say, look, it really doesn't work that way. Very seldom does anything work that way. To be all just the cooler reds. It was a little bit to get some smoother areas on things too. And that's what I can do now at this point, is to start to think about refining stuff as opposed to, well, before, when we were in that crazy shaded base coat phase. I'm gonna go with some of the blue liner, red liner. Well, once again, we're just going to try and strengthen some of those edges here, and then we've got that. That's your contrast red there, but we've got some of that And now we'll add some darks over here. Hopefully, my goal is to get some of these to end up by where the cracks are, so that those, by default, show up a bit more. Nothing like putting some dark next to very light colors. And then here on his tail, I'm also going to knock this down a bit. Because again, I really want the emphasis to be there on those flames. And actually using that bit of the contrast flesh terror red with the fluorescence, that was, again, that's another thing. Think of those as, in some cases, like very non-shiny ghost tints. Now I'm going to, on the eye right here, or the eye socket of this skull, I want it to be a little darker so that the kind of fiery stuff on the inside shows up a little more. I think that did the job. Now over here, we got to do something that is, and that's where we've got our Achillean green over here. It's a little bit like the color that we threw on the gun itself. Let's throw that over here. Now it's not like his footwear is supposed to be a bluish gray, but at this point I wanted to stand out from the coat without it having to be dramatically darker or lighter. See, we will maybe put a little bit of texture here into our road, such as it is. Back to the coat again, and this is to get a little bit of some gray. It has a little touch of blue in it. This, I want it to have a bit of a turn. So that's, see, I'm thinking of a little reflected light, and I know we've had this conversation where I've really surprised someone at a recent convention where I told him, I said, look, there's even a black sweatshirt has light reflecting on it. There is no doubt about that. You can see I'm even using that on parts of his hand there, facing towards the ground. I want to get some right here. I think I'm just perceiving that as possibly metal. Then we've got cloven hooves. Again, that's sort of a harder material also. This is a bit like the gun. Now, I don't want that to get quite as bright as the shininess of the gun here. The ghost tints ink. Oh, yeah, okay. I already caught that. Sometimes I forget to look up at the chat, so every so often I just kind of look over there and have to see, is that new? There. Now I have tons of videos on object source lighting, and I can even show you some. Here, let's grab this one here. Speaking of object source lighting, so we have all kinds of lighting. We have some freehand on here. Again, this is another. So but look at the difference in colors. You've got the greens and the purples and those golds all together. Very different palette, but the principles are the same. All the same. And that was, what was that, Army Painting Series 14. And I also, you can look at some of my other tutorials, my live streams like this. Try and tackle as many different things as I can. Because some people, they'll do these, well, oh, we're going to do object source lighting. Well, that's great, that one little area that you showed it on, but how does it get incorporated into the whole figure? like this. You kind of have to do a whole figure. So I've done entire units with between, well, 8 and 12 figures that have object source lighting and all that kind of stuff because that's great seeing it on one figure, but how do you do it on multiple figures? Because it's a different, well, if you do it like this, where you start early, it gets a lot easier when you're trying to do object source lighting on something like an entire army. Believe me, it does. And we're looking for some more sneaky little lights to come in here. Now here I am going to try and get a little bit of the red too on his hair. I don't want it to blend in with the skin tone, but I'm also trying to get it to separate a touch from his coat. Yeah, I need to. There's a little part of the highlight there that I just kind of forgot. Now, let's see if I can also put some of those lighter points here on the cracks in. Yeah, I can definitely go lighter. Oh yeah. Back here to, especially in a shadow area. Over here, that's good. That helps a lot. I gotta do that. Oops, sorry. I'm going off camera there. I don't know if you can really tell, but the setup actually is different than even the very last episode I did just a few days ago. I was able to get, there's nothing fancy, it was just a cutting mat, but it's sort of an off-white color, little bit tint of a gray, and it's already making a big difference. The cameras love that much more. So see, we just put ourselves little light highlights right there. That brings his coat forward. That collar comes a little bit more forward. Now here we've got another metal surface that could use some lights. We will use, aha. So this is almost going to be like a purple right here. We have a whole new color here. We're going to go into some of these. We'll even go in with the gun to put some of this purple on there. It's not going to register as purple whatsoever. I think that's another aspect that can freak people out sometimes is they see purple next to green for non-metallic metals and they say, wait a minute, that's supposed to be gray. Well, what do you see once it's all together? Oh yeah, it just looks like gray. So we're going to get some of that purple into here. Over here, we're just going to spread this around onto his hand. Even get some of that onto his trench coat here. Some of these pouches. Even here. And even on the leg here. Again, yes, it's supposed to be red, but you are not going to really notice the fact that there is this sort of burgundy, purple, whatever here. It's all just going to register as red. But when you look at it closer, because you look at the figure initially and you go, oh wow, look at that. And then you kind of want to analyze it a little bit closer and say, well, is there really more to this than just, okay, you've got that glow? Is there more to it besides that? So I'm trying to get this, again, this purple into this face here. It's tricky because these things are, well, they're small. He's, what, an inch and an eighth tall or whatever, and he's probably about 8 feet tall or so, or 7'5" or whatever, and if you were to actually have this thing be full-sized. Here, let's go with, again, a little bit of reflected light. Some more of that purple there again, lightening up. Let's find a few places to lighten the hair. We'll put some of this even on his jacket. Oh, I'm going to throw some of that on the arm here. We're going to throw some of that on his glove here. And then, got to do something with his pants because there's just nothing going on there. We'll do that, and then let's see if we can't do ourselves. I could take, I think there's some wildwood there. I could use that. It's basically similar to the brown liner. Here, let's just get some of that dark in here. You must have dark to show light. Like I said, try not to go heavy on rules and all that other stuff, but there are some times where it's just, okay, guys, this is kind of how it is. And that's one of those things. Things. I'm going to, yeah, here we go. Let's make a little bit of a dark. Yeah, that's one of those sort of cast shadow type things because it's actually facing down away from the light. I'm just trying to find some little bit of shading in there. Can go back in with some lighter stuff now. I think you can actually, there are individual fingers here that you could see in this. That'll do for now. Oh, let's see. There goes to Forge World Inks. Yeah, actually, what I've got to at some point see if I can't snag is some of the GW airbrush paints and just play around with them because I have no idea what they can do. I have absolutely no idea. I didn't even know they existed until what was it, this July or something like that? Yeah, when we went to the Adepticon staff meeting, and all of a sudden there was shelf after shelf of GW airbrush paints. So what the heck are these? So yeah, we added a little bit of lighter, sort of almost pinkish red in there. Let's go back to some of that's the fluorescent orange, that's the golden acrylics. Make sure that palette's sitting on there for you. And now I can glaze over that area of light that's there. It really does work now as a glaze. It's fantastic. I need to, yeah, just gotta, there's some of these that I'm actually gonna tone down just a bit. It's competing with the highlights on the gun there, and that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. I don't mind if those highlights are more towards the orange, but I don't want them to be quite so, they were getting kind of on the yellowish side. Even there on his leg here. So I'm going to try and get more of a reddish. That's better. Because it kind of goes from orange straight to that original deep red liner color that we had there. Gonna try and get a little bit of down into the depths here. That helps. I know you can't necessarily see it. Well, I think you can, actually. If I hold it like this, I think you can. Yeah, that again, that's the fleshed here red mixed with the golden acrylics fluorescent orange. This is the fun part where you, in some ways, you just go back and forth and you play with some of these things. Like right there, that didn't need a yellow light. That actually needed more of an orange there or a red. I'm going to get a little bit of the red on the chin here, maybe a touch of the orange where it sticks out here. Little indications of, yeah, what the skulls here are doing, the flaming skulls. Wow, just the dramatic difference of one side to the other. Yeah, we got these pouches. We got to get them some decent highlights on them. Again, because of we got the skulls sitting right there. I know I don't want to necessarily lose the color that I had on there that and have it just all kind of go to orange, but yeah, here too we got, yeah, on his eyebrows here I actually need to almost get a little bit of the fire, especially right here. We're kind of missing that. Not so much on the left side of his face, but on this right side of his face, like right there. I think that helps a bit. Now we've got that blue, and this is the crazy thing I want to try here. So we got some of the grayish blue here. I don't know if you can see it, but I'm actually going to go underneath here. Let's do it again. There. Okay. Yeah. Because it just can't be solid dark there. That's helpful. Now I did that. I am actually going to try and see if I can sneak a little bit of. I'm going to go more with the red right in here. That. Oh yeah, that's it. That's what I'm looking for. Maybe a little more of the fluorescent orange. Yeah, I'm trying to line it up with where this is projecting up. And I see here, okay, we got this whole thing here. That can't be that dark. That's got to be something else besides that dark, because some of the firelight would reflect on there. It's nothing insane, just a little bit of that. Yeah, just a couple of brush strokes gives me an indication that yeah, there's a little bit of the firelight kind of reaching that. And I think some of it just might reach this part of the glove here too. Well, his hand. It's not a glove. That's actually part of him. Sorry about that. Keep forgetting. When you paint as many different miniatures as I have to do, you just start to use generic terms for things. And it just becomes another piece of gear. Okay, I'm going to go a little bit more of an indication here on the ends of these fingers. Just a couple of shots here. So I think now, let's see, we started this at 2, well, right around 2. So we're about 2 hours into this. So I think we've done pretty well here. Now here, again, this is a little bit of a cleanup thing. Just going to go right here, clean that up, and also give it a little bit of a dark. Same thing here. I just kind of lost a little track of my shading there. We're going to do a couple more of these. Yeah. And then we also now, we need some dark here. We're going to take some of the blue liner, some of the brown liner. Especially right here, because it is, you kind of have a double shadow of him blotting out any light that's going to come from above, and then you have the fiery skulls from below, and that's going to cast a shadow in that area. I need to get some red there. Just a few touches of it. Now this, I will go into some yellow here. I took away some of the orange there, and I'm actually going to bring some of it back now. Because I took it away and I thought, yeah, that's better, because I was trying to make the gun be a little bit more brightly lit. And I said, no, I have to go back the other way now. Speaking of that same, more of an orange, I want to, on his hand over here, I want to get more of that there. What's wild is until, oh my gosh, I want to say 20 minutes before I started this thing, the two skulls weren't there. Those were a last minute add that I did because they're not part of the base. And I said, I think it would be way more fun color-wise to see this. And yeah, I'm really glad I did that. So much more fun. I'm actually going to look over at my chat here. I just want to make sure that it's still actually going. Oh, Chopper. Hey there. I just want to make sure that everything is still tracking. Okay, looks like we're all up to speed. Now, I can't tell you exactly which character from the Hellboy game that I'll be doing next. I know I've got the Rasputin. I think that's who that is. There's the female one. Oh, I've got him over here somewhere. I'm going to actually grab me something to drink real quick. Yep. Oh, they're kind of buried. Oh well. There's one big tentacled monster too. I gotta think of what. I don't remember what that one was. What? And then there's the minions, sort of, right? There's some of those. I'll be painting those guys. Now I'm gonna, on this coat here, I'll go back into my bluish grays here. find a few areas in these folds. Again, is that enough to just darken those down, but I'm making those cooler. Let's do that on this side too. And what else are we gonna do? Yeah, that needs a little bit dark, and then I'm gonna go back in just on that side there, give it a little touch of light. This glove here, I want to try and give him some sort of a... There we go. I don't want it to be bluish or gray because we've got that gun right there. But I also don't want it to be too orangey because, well, we've got the fire right there. It's just maiden flesh and the sepia liner. Again, I can see if I go more with a kind of a pointillism type thing here, just a bunch of little dots, it starts to make more of a texture there as opposed to just brush strokes. I did do that was a Painting Dark Sword episode, another one of those Patreon videos, and talked about how to do a textured cloth. I've got some Lord of the Rings things I'll be doing here. Gosh, Saruman and Gandalf, they both have cloaks and such that definitely need something like this. See, we're just doing these little dots right here. It gives it a little more texture than just... this is as smooth as the skin or as smooth as the gun. It's fabric after all. It probably should have some kind of texture on it, and that's what we're starting to do here. Now how about some on this shoulder? Okay, I think we've got the other thing too is we made the jacket a little bit darker than what you necessarily see in that reference picture because, well, you're not going to have much of a glow if you've got his coat being that light. So there are times where I don't want to say you manipulate your color scheme to suit the effect you're looking for, but sometimes you manipulate your color scheme to get the effect you're looking for. And I know I talk about this all the time in the army painting episodes. Most people, they cannot read your mind and know what it is that you are really trying to achieve with a certain thing. So if you get 75, heck, even if you just get half of what you were originally planning, nobody knows what your plan was. So to them, that's 100%. Because they have no idea, well, I really wish I could have done this, but, well, you either had to forego it or you just couldn't make it happen. They just won't know unless you tell them. Oh, wait a minute. Yes, it's still going. We're all sitting in awe. Thanks, Trevor. Time for some sleep. Catch the rest later. Well, thanks for stopping by, Ken. Well, these things, they tend to run anywhere between, say, 2.5 to 3+ hours. The idea is I want to present basically like a class. And this is how all of the the Patreon videos go too. Each one is its own class. And I try to just present as much information as I can, but in context. So not just, okay, we're going to paint a Space Marine shoulder. Well, that's great as long as every army that you do is in that same exact circumstance or whatever. But what if it's different? The circumstances change, materials change. What if you can get something? What if you can't? That's why I started to do the contrast paints, because people weren't able to get the Reaper liners and clears. Just trying to get a little more light to the eye. That's it. I wanted the eye to have just a touch more light. He always had sort of that mostly frustrated look. Exasperated. I mean, that's the look. Spent most of that movie, and that I'm talking about the more recent one, not the really old one. Well, I don't know how old the really old one is. That's kind of making me seem old, probably because I am. So again, the stuff that I'm doing on the skulls here, you can't quite see. The camera just says, "Oh my gosh, what are you doing to me?" Couple more lights there. Do I need to do anything to what's on the, well, the concrete? I'm just going to hit that, the little more of the, again, that's the golden acrylics there, the fluorescent. And I'll hold that up in a second for folks that maybe came in here much later. There. So that is what you're seeing, a lot of that right there. Now I keep going back and forth on the chin here. Sometimes I make it a little bit lighter, and sometimes I tone it back down again. I'm going to try and do some darker things again on this hand. See if I can't tighten up that, again, these little cracks here that are in that glove. Not glove, his hand, sorry. Hey, it's late. We're well over a 20-hour day here. Actually, almost pushed into it. Yeah. Yes, the words, not doing the words. But we're somewhere at around 21, 22 hours now. But I am going to start doing some darks here. We've been playing with the mid-tones, that sort of thing. Now I want to just play around with some darks here. So his skin tone, obviously it looks much darker than, say, what you see on the little reference there in the left-hand corner of my window. I'm going to see if I can strengthen that little furrow in his brow. Yeah, that just needed to be accentuated too. And on this barrel, see if I can't drop in a few darker reds. I even need, believe it or not, I actually need almost reflected, like the barrel is reflecting down onto this. And that, I know that sounds crazy, but when I do my armor and stuff, all the non-metallic and all that, you'll see me do that a lot where the reflections reflect on themselves. It's sort of was that the multiple mirror effect? One mirror casts onto the other one, and that casts onto itself, and you just have a cascade of images or reflections. Kind of what's going on here when we get into things like the metals. So I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's right here. That little touch there. It's something I do an awful lot on metals. That's that. Yeah, I'm gonna say that what we got down on the inside of his coat there, that's about as bright as I want that to get. I might try and do a little more here. I think this is one of the reasons I love using the oil paint so much, because it's really easy to get brushes into difficult places. Because there are definitely some difficult places here to get these brushes into. Now you can't quite see what I'm doing here, but there's some, I need some orange light hitting the leg, basically the upper part of his boot here. Okay. So let's look at our timer. So we are about 2 hours 15 minutes, I want to say. Yeah, maybe. Now what's weird, I don't understand. I'm looking at my timer though. It says 37 minutes. So I don't know if it might have zonked me out and brought me back in. I cannot tell that from here. But that's sort of weird. If I was knocked out, I'm just sort of knocked out of the live stream here. So if there was something weird, or if you were watching it, oh, okay, here we go. Runs with Caesars, another one of the Wappel staples. Sleep when you're dead. Yeah, that's actually, I know earlier today, as sleep is for the weak. Sometimes we're weaker at other times. I definitely would not mind some sleep right now, that's for sure. Actually, this weekend coming up is going to be interesting. Like I said, I'm going to try and do one more live stream on Friday/Saturday, but it's the annual cookie baking thing this weekend. But that's supposed to be taken up a notch because they're supposed to be sculpting chocolate, and I wanted to sculpt some vehicles out of chocolate and try and paint those. I filming the process, I kind of doubt it, although apparently there are some apps and other things for your phone that lets you even potentially record or stream live sorry, from your phone, which that could make things pretty darn interesting at conventions or when I'm not here, because normally when I'm not here I can't do anything. Okay, I'm still going in with some of these. Yeah, trying to see what the orange of my skulls is going to cast onto here as far as some of these inner surfaces. I'm going to try and get one more brighter shot on the chin there. the mullet. But on this side, we're going the opposite way. We're going to go with actually dark. We've been adding a lot of light. Now it's time to do some dark again. Just brown liner. And if this was the Reaper, not the Reaper, the contrast paints, it'd probably be Wildwood. Let's see if we can't get a little bit of shadow in there too. And as I've been trying to do, reinforce some more darks here on his hand. And then I will, again, same thing, some brown liner here. I say, yeah, that needed some dark there too. I need to get some definition on the pouches here. I'm sure if this were, say, a resin master or whatever, there would be, and it's not like there's no definition or anything on these, but it's a board gaming miniature, so you're just gonna have some of those areas a little bits lost. Now that I've got to break that up. That was just a little too much of a line, and I just went right back in again with a touch of some of that reddish orange there. Here, we'll grab a little bit of the Achillean green here, mix it in with the blue liner. And I'm looking to do, it's not just dark here. I'm also looking to have that touch of that kind of deep azure sky blue there. Same thing on this side of the gun barrel. And then here needs definitely something more. There's just not much going on right in this area here. So we'll give the coat a little bit lighter look, and now let's sneak in some of our maiden flesh. We'll just go right along the edge of his coat here. I'm even going to take some of the Lamian medium, thin it down. Remember we talked about the texture, the stippling. Well, let's maybe try some of that here too. This is, now let's say you don't have time to stipple the whole darn thing. What if we only do it in a few isolated places here, just to give this suggestion? As a 2D artist, this is something we would do all the time. You would just give the slightest hint of a texture in an area. You wouldn't paint every last fiber. You would just paint a few, and then the viewer does the rest of the work. Their brain tells them, aha, I think there's fiber there. Look at that little bit of texture. And they fill in the blanks for themselves. Sometimes leaving a little bit of mystery to the figure. It's just a way to get people to look at it longer. Because sometimes people they look at something, they say, oh yeah, that's neat, and they move on. And I know that's very important for people that they want to do the painting contest thing. I will be doing for the Patreon page. Oh, what would you call it? Road to Golden Demons. I finally now have. I think I have enough stuff from all genres. I mean everything, including the aeronautica planes. I think I can cover just about every category of that. There's Mantic. Actually, they have a painting contest at Adepticon, and I'll be doing some Kings of War units, hopefully to throw in that. Who knows? Maybe I get myself another Hellboy figure like this and enter this. I'm not quite sure what if it's only say stuff like Kings of War or if you can put things like well Hellboy in there. I think you can see there's a little more. Yeah, even here. So we'll do a few little dots. They're tiny. But it starts to indicate that okay, yeah, there's something going on. There's a texture to this cloth. It's not just a smooth like everything else. Now, if I did it on this back, I got to do it on this side too. Here, let's get a little more reflected light on his face here, on his mouth. The nose, I keep going back and forth. I darken it down so that the little bit of fiery light reflects on it, but I think that's what I need. Okay. That helped. Now on this shoulder here, we're going to go in, sort of bring some of that stippling over to this side. Stippling, again, it's got some blues in there. There's the maiden flesh that's in there. Lots of different colors. There's even, I think, some of that Achillean green in there. And now, since it is 4:21 here, I will call this. I'll just say this here is done. I want to thank everybody that's been watching Trevor run with scissors, Falcon, and we had a first last. Of course, Trevor, Ken, Chopper too, and let's see, we had Tutti Fruits, of course, or Fruity Toots, sorry, Engineer to Draw. Just gonna go ahead and wheel, yeah, it was and miniatures, conversions, and dioramas. Yeah, thanks again, guys. Oh, and Earth Minis. Oh, Chopper had a few comments there early on. Sorry if I missed those because there's always things going on. And James too. Great to see all you guys. Hope this is helpful. We did some texture things. We did some object source lighting things. Again, this is Hellboy from Mantic Miniatures. And I'll catch you guys. Oh, thanks. See you, Falcon.